Hello, my name is Lorraine O'Grady. I'm a conceptual and performance artist, as well as a cultural critic. And for almost 25 years, I also taught a course at the School of Visual Arts here in Manhattan, where I live, called Poetry and Art. The course examined just two poets, Arthur Rimbaud, an Impressionist, and Charles Baudelaire, an Expressionist. They were two poets who between them divided the two halves of the human mind. As a result, each year I would begin the course not knowing which of them I would prefer. This year, would life make me more receptive to the Impressionist way of seeing and making art, or to the Expressionist way? In the end, I tended to settle more on Baudelaire. Not because he was the better poet. The two were equals, and not because I was perhaps more an expressionist myself. I probably am. But rather because I valued Charles for the courage it took to live both his own horrific life and the even more horrific life of his partner of nearly 20 years, Jeanne Duval. Baudelaire is often considered the first modernist, and a man barely of his time. I think of Duval as the first postmodernist, a woman who lived more than a century before her time would come. I'm a Black woman whose parents met in Boston when they emigrated from Jamaica in the second decade of the 20th century, and so I identified strongly with Jeanne, who may have emigrated from Haiti to Paris in the third decade of the 19th. Nearly 80 years may have separated my mother Lena, born in 1898, and Jeanne, born in about 1820, but the world was still a comparatively slow and sleepy place then. In those 80 years, little had changed for the woman of color who'd been translated from the colony to the metropole. But in the 36 years of difference between Lena and me, the world seemed to have tipped on its axis. And yet, Jeanne's life felt closer, more familiar to me than my own mother's did. My mother didn't talk much about herself. We know Jeanne mainly through Charles's writings about her. But since he wrote brilliantly, we can still see her, even though only through a glass darkly. Because, as the Martinican poet Aimé Césaire once wrote, I could tell by my pulse, exoticism is not a good diet for me. My response was to struggle to find words of my own that Jeanne could speak. I'm now working on a 16-diptych photo installation about their impossible partnership and my impossible relationship to it. For Baudelairian Voices, I would like to read two pairs of writings by him that I hope will shed light on my thoughts and feelings about her and about the connection between them. First, in the 1983 English translation by Richard Howard, two of the many, many poems addressed by Charles to Jeanne. One about her hair, the second about the way she walked. Next, in Christopher Isherwood's 1947 translation, two entries from Charles's intimate journals. Some journals record their authors' daily lives in an attempt to fix memory. Still others lectures their author on how to get organized. Charles's journals did tend toward the latter type. The first entry I will read is from My Heart Laid Bare in Isherwood's version, and is revealing of Charles's attitude toward his work. The second, from the journal called Squibs or Flares, feels an interruption of the journal text itself. The entry is one of the very few times in all his writings, only a handful of times, that Charles speaks naturalistically, not abstractly or in the seductive stereotypes of poetry, about the depth of his relationship to Jeanne. First, from Richard Howard's 1983 translation of Baudelaire's Flowers of Evil, poem number 24, The Head of Hair. Ecstatic fleece that ripples to your nape and reeks of negligence in every curl, to people my dim cubicle tonight with memories shrouded in that head of hair, I'd have it flutter like a handkerchief. For torpid Asia, torrid Africa, the wilderness I thought a world away, survive at the heart of this dark continent. As other souls set sail to music, mine, O my love, embarks on your redolent hair. Take me, tousled current, to where men as mighty as the trees they live among submit like them to the sun's long tyranny. Ebony sea, you bear a brilliant dream of sails and pennants, mariners and masts, a harbor where my soul can slake its thirst for color, sound, and smell, where ships that glide among the seas of golden silk throw wide their yardarms to embrace a glorious sky, palpitating in eternal heat. Drunk and in love with drunkenness, I'll dive into this ocean where the other lurks, and solaced by these waves, my restlessness will find a fruitful lethargy at last, rocking forever at aromatic ease. Blue hair, vault of shadows, be for me the canopy of overarching sky. Here, at the downy roots of every strand, I stupefy myself on the mingled scent of musk and tar and coconut oil for hours. For hours, forever. Into that splendid mane, let me braid rubies, ropes of pearls, to bind you indissolubly to my desire. You, the oasis where I dream, the gourd from which I gulp the wine of memory. Next, from the Howard translation, poem number 28, Even When She Walks. Even when she walks, she seems to dance. Her garments writhe and glisten like long snakes, obedient to the rhythm of the wands by which a fakir wakens them to grace. Like both the desert and the desert sky, insensible to human suffering. And like the ocean's endless labyrinth, she shows her body with indifference. Precious minerals form her polished eyes, and in her strange symbolic nature, where angel and sphinx unite, where diamond, gold, and steel dissolve into one light, shines forever, useless as a star, the sterile woman's icy majesty. Then, from Christopher Isherwood's 1947 translation of Baudelaire's Intimate Journals, from My Heart Laid Bare, entry number 113, Precious Notes. Precious notes. Do every day what duty and providence dictate. If you worked every day, your life would be more bearable. Work 6 days without relaxing. Define subjects, know thyself, as the Greeks would say. Always be a poet, even in prose. High style, nothing more beautiful than the commonplace. First, make a start, then apply logic and analysis. Every hypothesis demands a conclusion. Find a daily frenzy. And finally, in Isherwood's translation, from Squibs or Flares, entry number 22, Moved by Contact with Those Pleasures. Moved by contact with those pleasures which were themselves like memories, softened by the thought of a past ill spent, of so many faults, so many quarrels, Of so many things each must hide from the other, he began to weep, and his tears fell warm in the darkness upon the bare shoulder of his beloved and still charming mistress. She trembled. She also felt moved and softened. The darkness shielded her vanity, her elegant affectation of coldness. These two fallen creatures, who could still suffer since a vestige of nobility remained with them, embraced impulsively, mingling in the rain of their tears and kisses regrets for the past with hopes all too uncertain for the future. Never perhaps for them, as upon that night of melancholy and forgiveness, had pleasure been so sweet, a pleasure steeped in sorrow and remorse. Through the night's blackness, he had looked behind him into the depths of the years. Then he had thrown himself into the arms of his guilty lover to recover there the pardon he was granting her.